Nightmares are not dangerous, but sometimes, if nightmares and certain sleep phenomena are misunderstood, they can lead to real day and nightmares for both the person involved and for their estranged families. This is Jürgen Rasmussen, by the way. Welcome to the Provocative Hypnosis channel. So in this video, I want to talk about sleep paralysis and night terrors, trauma, and claims of repressed memories. You see, one of the ways that people become convinced that they have repressed memories of sexual abuse is by misunderstanding sleep phenomena. One of the important functions of sleep is to immobilize the body from being able to move during REM sleep. And during REM sleep is when we dream. What sometimes happens to some people is that they have sleep paralysis, and in its very mild conditions, it's a kind of semi-conscious state where the person to some extent wakes up and realizes that they can't move their body. They feel completely immobilized. Now the imagination then starts to really try to figure out why or what might be going on. Now, one thing that seems to be going on is that the brain really accesses the archaic elements of the mind during the sleep cycle. Some people have strong feelings of being sexually assaulted during sleep paralysis. Some studies show that about 15% of people have a very strong sensation of there being some presence that might be, a dead relative or something like that. Around 19% have strong sexual feelings. Around 11% have strong sensations of pain. Quite a few people have feelings of being held down and of being restrained in some way. Now, this is not evidence of trauma, by the way. And what we know is that dreams are not memories. And dream content is not reliable information about something having occurred in real life. But what can sometimes happen to people is if they don't know about how memory works or sleep phenomena, they might have these overwhelming, sensations of being restrained and held down and sexually abused. And then they might conclude, if they have bought into the ideology of the trauma activists, if they've read Gabor Mate or Bessel van der Kolk or anything like that, they might easily conclude that this dream content is evidence of a repressed memory of sexual abuse. And given how strong the feelings can be and how visceral it can be extremely compelling. I should also point to here the real dangers of dream interpretation work. There are studies that show that people who go through dream interpretation work with a psychologist end up way more convinced that very unlikely events have happened before the age of 3, before the age where we really have the capacity to store in long-term memory autobiographical memories. So be aware of this. If you see clients for a living and someone comes in with something like this, refer them to the literature. Do not at all encourage them to do dream interpretation work or sell them the idea that this might be some sort of repressed memory that's occurring. Also, if this is you, if you have had these sorts of experience, know that there's no evidence that this at all points to you having been the victim of sexual abuse. On the topic here, there is a book I highly recommend reading if you're interested in this stuff. It's by a psychologist and memory researcher called Lawrence Patihis. It's called Trauma, Memory, and Law, third edition. And one thing I like about this book is that he shares some actual cases from the legal system, both in the United States and in the UK, including one of the cases is one involving sleep phenomena, where a young mother is with her family on vacation in the UK. She wakes up at 1 a.m. in the morning after having had this night terror, which freaks her out. She talks about this throughout the night with her husband. She's convinced that this is a memory of being sexually abused. The next day, she confronts her family, and the family is estranged. And then the police start to investigate. The whole thing ends up into the courts. And in this case, the defense is savvy enough to involve the British False Memory Foundation, and the whole thing results in a acquittal. This is a case that Lawrence Patihis writes about in the book. As he notes, it's kind of interesting because these sorts of night terrors often happen when people go on vacation abroad, and the sleep paralysis often happens in the first cycle of the first sequence, I should say, of the dream cycle, the first RAM sequence, which for many people would correspond with having this sort of experience at around 1 a.m. or so. So anyways, I hope you found this interesting and useful. If you are curious to make some sort of change in your life and you're wondering whether you and I could be a good fit, I invite you to go to provocativehypnosis.com and send me an email. I always have a quick conversation with people before we set up anything formally. Also, if you're watching this in June 2025, I'm just about to start a 4-week online course, meeting every Tuesday of this month for 2 hours. And the topic is mindfulness and meditation in psychotherapy, change work, and coaching. Both how to help people who are stuck on the meditative path, who have run into problems due to being on retreats and using apps and stuff like that, and also how you can tailor make meditations for your clients when they're not interested in the spiritual quest or being a long-term meditator. So if this resonates, check out the seminar page at provocativehypnosis.com. Any questions or comments, feel free to ask. And as always, thanks for listening.